Online hiring is not a labor market, and why that matters to the entire workforce. Two economic first principles that show what this really is. Hi, my name is Sarah Trumbull. I'm the founder and CEO of the Job Applicant Perspective, the first anonymous user reviews for job ads across the US. There's a level of go-to-market awareness as well as public service for all the gaslighting. This comes from my blog post in written format, but I'm running a paradigm shift, so you need to try and meet people where they're at, which includes video and audio. And social media, I use little clips of this. So, starting from the beginning, a simple economic demonstration, public service announcement. I want to demonstrate using first principles of economics that the online hiring ecosystem is not a labor market. And understanding why matters for wages, stability, unions, public policy, and the future of work in America. This is not an emotional argument. This is not a cultural argument. This is structural. Let's walk through it cleanly. Who this is for. This piece is written for journalists, especially labor and tech reporters, economists, labor scholars, market designers, and IO researchers. Policymakers and public policy officials, especially those concerned with the workforce participation and regional economic mobility. Workers, job seekers, and hiring managers who feel deeply that something about the digital hiring ecosystem has been off for a long time. Anyone who has ever said or heard the phrase, nobody wants to work anymore. This is not about blame. This is about structural truth and the kind that once seen cannot be unseen. The two economic principles. Principle 1, the structural erasure of user experience. In any functioning market, stakeholders must be able to evaluate the vendors they interact with for the quality of their goods and services. This means user reviews. From Airbnb to Uber, Rotten Tomatoes to TripAdvisor, Yelp to Google reviews, holding an online marketplace accountable for the mistreatment of users, especially in a market they cannot functionally opt out of, is non-negotiable. Just is. If job seekers were stakeholders in the online labor market, which all the economic textbooks describe them as, platforms would require user reviews in order to demonstrate to employers they met job seeker needs and thus deserve more subscriptions. How else does a customer choose a vendor that meets their end user stakeholder needs? If job seekers were the product of the online labor market, platforms would still require reviews. How else does a marketplace ensure efficient delivery of a product to the buyer? Nah? The absence of job seeker review mechanisms is not a neutral emission. It's not possible for it to be. It's a design choice, one that reveals the underlying labor market function. Not meeting human user needs and delivering inefficiency is the product employers are purchasing. This is not a labor market. Principle 2, the revenue generation model. Here's a simple thought experiment. How do you tell the difference between an employee of the online talent industry and a modern U.S. job seeker? Both spend thousands of hours and multiple years generating revenue for the talent solutions industry. Only one of them receives a paycheck. Yeah. And relevant for every employed person, the economics is painfully clear. Any system operating at this scale with an unpaid workforce will suppress wages across the labor force. You just will. A labor market cannot be powered by an unpaid labor force without wage suppression. History gives us no exceptions. Millions of job seekers contribute uncompensated labor, resume, skill tests, ATS uploads, data extraction, algorithm training, and so we see wage depression, increased employer power, feedback loops that reward inefficiency, platform scaling, extraction instead of efficiency. This is not a labor market. The mechanism is not abstract. It operates on 3 levels at least. I haven't got to the other ATS ones yet, but these 3 for sure. Visible supply inflation. Platforms profit from posting volume, not successful hires. Ghost jobs, listings that never lead to employment, have been documented since 2013. That's when they started getting reported on, which means they were existing in the market longer than that. And they now constitute 20 to 30% of online postings. The market looks flooded with opportunity. It isn't. What we're just saying is that since 2013, we've been running a lemon labor market, Acre Loft's leminism labor market. Functional supply inflation. Companies post evergreen roles permanently, whether a vacancy exists or not. They legit, actively make the market even further lemons. Workers apply to jobs that may never be filled. Employers gain optionality and internal leverage over existing staff. The lack of thinking involved in this behavior is off the charts. Threatened supply inflation. Talent pools, databases of potential replacements built from every resume ever uploaded function as silent leverage. No one has to hire a replacement. Employers just need workers to believe that they could. The result, a digital reserve army of labor that suppresses wages even when actual labor demand is stable. Workers feel the pressure, they just can't see where it's coming from. For the full mechanism that these three parts, check out Schrodinger's Strikebreakers, how online hiring lowers wages for every worker. Unions, I do not know how I can say exploited labor market, exploited free labor any harder. Economists, I would love to see the words George Acre Loft's lemon market with more underlines. System theories, people, and information researchers, closed feedback loops, if that's helpful to you. Closed feedback loops are Argus and Schroen, defensive reasoning, self-sealing systems. I don't know how you call this in human-computer interface stuff, but these are the things that I'm trying to say. This is not a new economic phenomenon, even. Labor markets have encountered this structure before. More recent example, child labor laws were not passed only to protect children. They were passed because a workforce that could not refuse and was paid below market rates suppressed wages for adult workers who could refuse. The mechanism is documented. When one participant class provides labor at a discount, it weakens bargaining power for everyone. The insight is not moral, it's mathematical. A labor market that extracts thousands of hours from millions of participants without compensation, without the ability to opt out, and without accountability will suppress wages. Not because anyone intended it, but because that's what the structure does. Not because anyone is immoral, but because wages respond to structure, not sentiment. One of my social media posts on this stuff pointed out not just child labor laws. More recent example than that is prison labor also does this. Puts small businesses out of business and depresses wages, which, yeah, I guess I could see that too. I didn't think about it from that angle, but I can definitely see where they're coming from. So what is this market? Platforms don't just technically intermediate between employed and job seekers. They continuously transmit a message about who each party is, and both sides absorb it. It's an identity as a service market. The service is the continuous digitally manufactured validation of employer identity and power. The identity is purchased with the time, data, and hope of an unpaid workforce of job seekers. It mimics a labor market to maintain legitimacy. It has some occasional externalities, an offshoot of an actual match, but that's not what they're actually purchasing. Its core transaction is not matching. It's identity reinforcement. The starting assumption was job seekers can't be trusted, so we built a system that treats them as untrustworthy, and now the system's existence is cited as proof of the original assumption was correct. The job market went online the way employers thought the market worked, not how it actually functioned. Newspapers matched people. Job boards plus ATS filter people. That is entirely different, but very identity-driven, which is what I mean to say when I'm talking about filtering as a concept in and of itself is promising to extend unemployment of the U.S. labor force, promising to profit via extending unemployment from the people that it will require to use its service in order to be able to filter anyone, which BT dubs is wildly questionable to me in terms of its moral ethics. If you think the market has two sides, we recognize that the unpaid side of the market is the one that's driving all of its profits and revenues. To allow a filtering mechanism to even exist is promising to filter out the unpaid labor force that it requires to continue to stay unemployed in order to exist as a filter aid. The morals of that are extremely questionable to me, worthy of investigation. Inefficiency justifies the importance of the company. They are the type of company that requires filtering, not just matching. Thousands want to buy here. Thousands want to buy our handbags. We're that type of company. It's an identity market, just like Gucci is an identity-driven purse to have. It's not just a regular purse. It's a special purse, yeah? The distrust becomes identity. Identity becomes policy preferences. Policy preferences shape the labor market. The labor market reinforces identity. And this cycle continues. Grief, humanity, and change. Changing a system like this requires something harder than policy. It requires people who built it or who benefited from it to see it differently. That's not easy, I know. This is where I'm going to talk about. So all of this stuff is running around. We're talking about frame monopoly, right? Where when it comes to the labor market, professionalism is the entitlement to set down one frame of reference. Everybody looks at the labor market only through this frame of reference, never through this frame of reference, even though this frame of reference, by and large, is far greater than this frame of reference in terms of its impact. But this is the only one we're allowed to look at. Sometimes like deconstructing things like deconstructing colonialism, deconstructing ableism in my case, was about learning to pick up a frame of both frames of reference again. You know, so I get it in that it's a process. But my son Micah was born in 2020. He is medically complex. We discovered this after he was born, and it's one of those rare things where most of his differences don't present as you'd expect. For the purposes of this story, his sister had taken Zantac for infant reflux. By the time Micah was born, it had been pulled from the market. My kids are who I name my principles after because they inspire me, you know. The two stakeholder Devon's paradox. Nobody had named it yet. I don't know how you make these things, so I called it the Micah paradox because I wanted him to be remembered for something, you know. And I called the Aurora principle was the first principle of online hiring. It's fun for me. Anyway. During his first 3 years, he periodically suffered painful episodes that would last for a few weeks. In those weeks, he would writhe and wail in pain for an hour or two every few days. The symptoms would then completely remit until the pattern began again a few months later. I rushed him to the ER several times to be told I was overreacting. I made several medical appointments inquiring about heartburn because his sister had taken Zantac. We were told that it was off the market and it didn't match the presentation anyway. This was during COVID when we were dealing with this and other aspects of his medical care. I'm sure you can guess how hard getting in was. I'm not sure if anyone has ever sat with their medically complex 2-year-old, holding his hand or his head while he wailed in pain and writhed, not going to the doctor anymore because what was the point? But knowing you wouldn't leave him to experience it alone. If the best you can do is make him comfortable and let him know he's not alone in this, that's what you do. One night during these sessions, despite all the warnings from the doctors and their assurances, my husband jumped up, ran upstairs, and smashed up a Tums and put it in a sippy cup of water. Micah drank it. Within a half hour, he was unrecognizably better. I get to live with the fact that due to advice I trusted, my son went the first 3 years of his life experiencing unimaginable pain on top of all the other things he experienced periodically, that I could have solved at least this one with a Tums. We trusted people who were genuinely wrong, not even maliciously so. Micah genuinely did not present in the way they expected. There is a great grief involved in being wrong about something that was so simple and so clearly your responsibility. Yeah. The doctors, a couple different doctors in a couple different states, family practitioners, several different urgent cares in several different states, even the ERs in several different states. For them, we were one of 200 patients, maybe. They were following protocol, and he didn't present the way that they expected. And I thought I had been to so many different medical professionals who would constantly reassure me, no, that's not it. It's not the right thing to do. So I thought I covered my bases too. And yet they could have investigated harder. There's something there. And I could have just taken agency and done it anyway. And I didn't, you know? And yet we can't, any of us, change what we didn't know when we didn't know it. The trick is, what are we going to do when we do? People often repeat the only explanation they have ever known. But when it comes to the labor market online, we have a better one now. And when we know better, we get to choose better. Our house is never without extra bottles of antacid anymore. What TJAP is trying to restore, that's why I built the job applicant perspective, to reintroduce the market mechanisms that's been missing since hiring went online 20 years ago, worker reviews of hiring intermediaries. If you use your thinking brain, you'll remember that in actuality, hiring intermediaries never used to be job boards, ATS systems, recruiters, or sub-recruiters. They used to be called newspapers. And job seekers did review hiring intermediaries. They sent letters to the editor. They talked to their buddy's buddy who worked at the newspaper or their friend of a friend. They stopped buying the paper when it didn't go well for them. Or after they called up the paper and they stopped buying the paper, they might encourage their friends to stop buying the paper. They did review the paper. It was only when hiring went online that the agency of the labor force got stripped from the labor market, and the labor market was no longer required to meet the needs of the labor force in order to exist. That's the difference. The agency got stripped. TJAP is meant to reinstall it. Online hiring is really just an electronic taxi. That's all it is. It's taking you to employment. Only this $600 billion a year global industry operates in a regulatory vacuum and minus user accountability. Honest to God, it's mandatory use of Uber without regulation or user reviews. And it doesn't work because it wouldn't. That's not how reality works ever. Like ever. I don't make the rules, you know? The job applicant perspective restores the feedback loop required for a functional market. Change rule were not overly confusing. Bidirectional feedback is rather non-negotiable. This isn't ideology. This is market design. I'll put some things for check the research for those who need receipts, like Acrelaf, learn ramen from hidden workers on Tech Talent, which BT Jobs, I love that they called out our demographic of people, which are caregivers and also the disabled, because honest to God, the disabled are the solution here. My plan is to hire as many of them as possible and hire people like myself, because what the market desperately needs is empathy and compassion. I genuinely think that technology is the physical infrastructure of carrying information across large distances. Empathy is the emotional infrastructure that allows anyone to share any real information across large distances. Because yeah, I could tell you I didn't get the job or why I didn't get the job or what I thought of your experience, but if I know I'm going to get shamed for it, the bad thing has already happened. So why would I be the bad thing and get shamed? Why would I just not say nothing at all? You know, it'd be better. It'd be easier. And for the other people, they're like, I could listen to what you think, but why would I listen to what you think? Because I don't respect you because you're the one thinking it, you know? And thus the online labor market right now just runs on bad data and data drift. That's a problem, you know? The disabled population and caregivers of the disabled are brilliant at empathy, care, compassion, and concern. They would help the labor market work. The labor market would help their economic situation. And they would help people who want in-person work be able to find access to it. It's brilliant, but the market needs lack of empathy. For me, is such a hallmark of a labor market running without trust, because when a digital distance are so wide, if you're not moving with empathy and consideration, what you're just doing is telling people that, watch out, I might be a person that will harm you for telling you true things. And that's just going to make people not say true things. And that's just going to make the market not work. We need accurate data, not thinking of empathy as like a emotional weakness or like softness, think of it as permeability and discernment. And the disabled population are just excellent at being discerning in many ways because they have to, because people don't look out for them. So they start looking and watching, being careful and watching signs and all that. They're very good. Anyway, this is my journey to learn more about stuff too. Regardless, I go off in tangents here, but these aren't opinions in general. Restraint, Rule, Akerlof, Resnick, Zackhauser, etc. They're not opinions. They're structural analysis grounded in economies, labor, theory, and platform design. I also have some of my own. I'm a recursive systemic thinker. I do think when you bring the autistic ADHD hyperlexic folks out of the woodwork, sometimes we ride to the rescue of the American economy. We're quite good at the systems historically, We're transparent, loyal, and I promise to never get in a battle with a dude over like what was it, duel Hamilton got into? Yeah, that dude was definitely autistic ADHD. So true. Regardless. Closing. Why this will be remembered in economic history. I believe this era of digital hiring will go down in economic history, labor history, public policy history, civil litigation history. 27 million people long-term unemployed by a company that profited from their unemployment. I don't know. Platform governance history, it's that historically significant. And I hope each of us chooses to stand in this moment in a way that honors us and honors our values with humanity, with mistakes. Because the great thing about mistakes is how educational they are. Shame, when you embrace it, allows you to adapt and learn, with clarity about which direction is up and which direction is down. Honestly, us passionate people, we are cause-driven people. If you can't tell, obviously. And I'm a cause-driven person and entrepreneur. And one of the most healing things for me has been to find a cause, not worth dying for, like in the movies. For people like me, that's actually really dysregulating. But a thing worth losing for, that's actually quite grounding. It's centering. Yeah, a thing that was worth doing, that was beautiful and worth it, regardless of the outcome, because the reward was already in the pleasure of the chance to do it unapologetically. Do you ever watch Field of Dreams? And Shoeless Joe Jackson was talking to Kevin Costner's character. He was talking about baseball. Yeah, you wanted to win, but it was the feel and the crack of the bat and the feel of the dirt and the sound of the crowd. Yeah, I never understood that before until I started moving in the economics of this labor market systems. I feel like I picked up a cello and discovered I could play, and not just play, but play really well. It's wonderful. It's really nice. A thing that was worth doing regardless of the outcome, because the reward was already in the pleasure of the chance to do the thing unapologetically. Something worth fighting and losing for. May all of us find a thing in life that aligns that deeply. Peace and love and healing to all of us. Now, I want to add a comment in here because it was really insightful. One of my readers had said, I think it's actually really helpful to add, especially for people who are economists or journalists. One of the readers said a nice thing. I'm going to read the whole thing, but he also made a great point about how this is a race to the bottom for the talent as well. Said, exceptional structural analysis, the unpaid labor extraction point is devastating once you see it. What's underappreciated is how this creates a selection bias problem too. The platforms optimize for applicants willing to invest the most uncompensated time, which filters for desperation rather than fit. So not only does the online labor market as is depress wages, it actively degrades hiring quality by rewarding the wrong signal. I actually think that's super insightful and a good point. You might think more on that one. I like systems, structural analysis, it's fun. So anyway, thank you very much. Hope you all do well. Please stop by the job applicant perspective. Consider us Yelp in a world of professionally mandated fine dining with no health department, no FDA. Also, Yeah, please check us out on our socials and just be kind to each other out there. The internet turned the world into a snowstorm. You really don't want to call the corporate office. You want to be kind and insightful with people on the roads, you know? That's the way. And especially in an online environment, empathy is where you're starting to get real information as opposed to performance, you know? Moving with empathy gives you, I really think technology is the structure, is the physical structure that allows information to be shared, but empathy is a structure that allows accurate information to be shared. When you're moving with empathy, you start getting accurate information. You get vulnerability, which is accurate information, which is, you know, trust and the adaptability and innovation. But when you're moving without empathy, you're not getting that. You get engagement, but you're not getting accurate information, and that's a problem, you know? So anyway, that's it for now. Thanks very much. Have a good one and stay sane out there. The world needs more sane people.